G'day guys.
Hello.
How's everyone doing out there? We have a slightly different video for you this week. Hillary had a couple of really excellent videos with some really good footage ready to go, which detailed us right after our sea trial with Sahaya, the steel boat. We drove all the way down through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, down the Caribbean side of Mexico, through Veracruz, and then all the way across to the border of Guatemala, Mexico area, which was Chiapas, where Varuna is right now. And then we grabbed some of our stuff that we needed, our most important stuff that we were going to need, and headed back on north.
As our boat deal fell apart, that we were going to.
We're like 50 miles outside of where Varuna was, and it all went no good.
Yeah, but as I went to go put the finishing touches on these next few videos last night, I found that our external hard drive completely died, wiped itself blank, and we lost a few weeks worth of video footage.
Which is a bummer.
A big bummer.
That's everything on there. We had some great stuff lined up for you. Hillary had almost finished today's episode, and then all of the other weeks now are gone as well, which sets us back quite a bit. The positive thing is, though, is we got to redo this video, something we've been wanting to do for a while, and talk a little bit about the boat buying process.
Yeah, we'll go into a little bit more detail about what we're looking for in a boat, what we set out when we go to look at boats and search for boats, what we look for, and then just the process of how you buy a boat.
And why we didn't get the steel boat, and it wasn't because it was steel.
No. So last week we left off, we had gone out and done the test sail on Sahaya, the steel boat in San Francisco. After the test sail, we had 3 items that we wanted to be addressed before we were happy and ready to close on the boat. Of course, the broker was trying to push for us to close like the second we got back to the dock, and we sat down, we said, no, we need 3 things addressed. 2 were super minor. One issue ended up being a bit bigger of a deal. We knew from our initial inspection that the autopilot was leaking a bit of hydraulic fluid, but was told that it still worked, that it was this awesome, the best autopilot ever. It just needed a seal replaced or a rebuild kit or something. Well, it turns out it actually did not work at all, we discovered on the test sail. Would not come on, would not do anything. So we requested for that issue to be addressed, whether it was just the rebuild kit and the seal or something else. We said we want the autopilot to be fixed and working, since we were told that is how it was.
And it was constantly told to us that this was an easy fix and something that wasn't an issue. Put a dollar figure on it and sign off on the closing deal. And we'll go more into that in the boat buying process. But there's a reason why if there's things that you're questioning about, where you're not really sure what the price point may fall in, to request the seller to have that fixed. Because you don't want it to be where someone's telling you that it's an easy fix and then it turns out to be a lot more, which is what this was. This autopilot fix came back, the seller refused to do the fix, and they were quoted between $3,000 and $4,000 for a complete new autopilot, since parts were unavailable for the older autopilot. And that right then kind of made us question a lot of other things with the buying process and the brokerage firm as well, which also led into, we had a weird sequence of events. One of our patrons, who we've been more real-time with, had sent an email to the brokerage firm, not at our request, to say that the communication issues that we'd been having only with one specific broker, not with the brokerage, but the communication had been lacking. The broker had never reached out to us via phone calls when we had accepted offers, when there was issues that were coming up or test sales that were pending. We had to contact them every time via multiple emails, which we never received one response from, and multiple phone calls, which we never received a response from either, until we got someone live on the phone.
So needless to say, there were some communication issues.
A patron reached out to them and sent an email to the brokerage to say, hey, look, we're looking at buying a boat. And all they had said was the communication issues seem to be lacking. That set the broker off on a rampage. The first time he decided to call us, he hadn't responded to any of our 5 other emails about the actual transaction, but sent us an email with their private email, basically going off on the fact that we had said negative stuff about them or something like that. It just turned into a complete shambles. We tried to talk it through in a professional standpoint and discuss the deal on one thing and how the communication had worked on the other. Wasn't interested in hearing it. He was extremely aggressive, bordering on abusive towards us, and just kind of made it put a real sour taste in our mouth. After the fact, we did try and talk with the owner and go over some of those issues as well, since we hadn't had any issues with the brokerage itself. But the broker then also, the actual brokerage owner, didn't seem to want to communicate and talk to us about it. They didn't want to have a reasonable discussion about, what happened and why it happened. So that was it. We walked away at that point. It was a done deal.
Yeah.
The broker.
I did reach out to the actual owner of the boat to see if maybe there was some failure in communication there.
And we got the whole line, which you can get later in the buying process. We'll talk about the whole line of they were extremely offended by what we even offered. Look, they took the offer, they accepted it, and they wanted to go through with the purchase. The boat's worth what people want to pay for it, and if you don't want to accept it, no one's forcing your arm in it. I don't know why people need to be so offended by things. It's a simple yes or no. That's enough on that. Back to more positive stuff.
So we were stuck in the bottom of Mexico at this point, planning on driving back to our new boat with all of our necessary items. We decided still to pack up Varuna, drive back, and continue the boat search. Along the way, we got another lead on a boat in the Bay Area.
Another day, another boat.
Another boat.
We're at Richmond Yacht Club in San Francisco.
Here to look at a Valiant 40.
Which we really like. You guys all know, the ones that know about the boats, the Valiant 40s are well-known boats and are probably the most common or well-known cruising boat around the world. They've been around for a long time. Bob Perry design. It's what the Polaris in La Paz was based on. So we thought it'd be a great boat. And as we'll discuss in the boat buying process, it is a boat that was perfect. It was the best boat ever. No better boat in the harbour. The best boat, and it just wasn't.
It didn't quite live up to the way it had been presented.
Yeah. So we'd made really big plans on grabbing that, and it didn't take us more than a couple of minutes on board to realise it wasn't the boat we expected.
Totally functional the way it is, and there was always something. That's just a pickup. It's the item on the right.
Nice. So this is the lowest point, and this would be the sump here, I guess. Yeah, that's as deep as it goes.
Yep.
All right, what are we looking for in a boat? There was a few things. Originally, the reason why we're looking for a boat was for the three items, which was a bit more space on board, whether it be for people or storage. There was better engine access, and there was a third one. Which I think was the same.
One was berths, more berths, because we wanted the option to have more people on board, and then also storage space for some of our bigger, bulkier, cold weather type items.
Now, what are we looking for in an actual boat, design-wise, structural-wise, and handling-wise, and all those things? Primarily, we're looking for a encapsulated fin keel with a skeg-hung rudder. We hadn't ruled out full keels at all, so full keels were still on our radar, and we were looking at full-keeled boats. We also wanted a cutter rig, ideally a cutter rigged, but we were open to ketches, or cutter ketches or something like that. But we really wanted a cutter rig and not a ketch rig. We wanted some space on the aft of the boat. Probably more for solar panels was a big reason why, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but just keeping it simple, less rigging. We wanted something where we could have multiple sail plan options, but still easy to handle with just the two of us.
Which is why we like the cutter, yeah.
So once we've narrowed down the type of boats that we're looking at the overall condition of the boat. We found one thing, a lot of times the listings will list new this, new that, new whatever, and then when you actually go into detail, it was new in 2001 or something, more than 15 years ago. That's not new anymore. It was replaced at one point, so it's not original, but
It's the wording of it. The wording is really misleading. It's one thing to say this was done and that was done, but to refer to something as being new, I think is very deceptive. It's a way to get you in to be like, oh, it's got brand new rigging. 15-year-old rigging is not new anymore. That's rigging needing replacement, in our opinion. Mm-hmm. The other thing was, this boat is ready to go. Ready to go today, right? Perfect. Mm-hmm. And that is debatable. It really depends on what you're going to do with the boat. I mean, any boat, if it's floating, is probably ready to go to a degree.
Depends on where you want to sail with it and how you want to sail.
Yeah, we were not looking for a boat to go coastal cruising or in a harbour or in a bay or anything like that. We were looking for a boat that was, if it was ready to go, that meant ready to go to southern Chile, which is where we're ready to go to.
Yes.
So if the boat does not have the rigging that's going to stand up to that, or a myriad of other things, then that's not a ready to go boat for us.
Yeah. So the big things we were looking at, as you can probably tell, one is the rigging, and wanting to know the age of it. If there's no age on it, it probably needs to be replaced, which isn't a problem, just something you need to factor into price. And another big thing we were looking at was whether it had swaged or mechanical fittings. So is it going to be easy to replace it or a lot more difficult?
Generally, swaged fittings, which are the older traditional way of doing wire rigging, are a lot more expensive because you have to have special equipment to be able to swage them. It's not something you can do yourself. The newer mechanical fittings are a lot more do-it-yourself, and it does give you a much cheaper option to redo rigging in other parts of the world as well, where they might not have machinery to do swaging.
Mm-hmm. Other big things, the age and condition of the sails, that need new sails, kind of the decks we found from some of our other boats. Obviously, teak decks can present big issues if you have soft spots. The general condition of the wiring, the plumbing, if any of that's been updated or if it has old original plumbing and wiring.
And that depends on how well the boat's been used or if it's sat for a long time as well. You get a lot of pictures and it's really hard to tell anything from the pictures other than the general layout of the boat. You may be able to kind of get a couple of looks at other things like the mechanical fittings on the standing rig or something like that. But really, until you see it up front in person, it's pretty tough to tell the condition of them. The other thing that we could generally base off of a picture would be maybe the electronics. And just because we're trying to narrow it down, this doesn't mean it's the case, but to try and narrow it down, you could tell if the electronics were quite old, quite ancient models. It was a good indicator that the wiring was also probably of that era as well. Same with plumbing. You could generally get an idea of the condition of certain appliances and so on board as to what the condition of the underlying infrastructure may be. And that's not 100% right, of course, but when we're trying to narrow down 30 or 40 boats to a decent number that's worth our time to look at, that's unfortunately what we have to go by.
Mm-hmm. Another big thing, as we learned from the Polaris in La Paz, is tank condition can be a big thing if it has old black iron tanks. Those are very prone to developing rust and leaks, which kind of goes in with all that. And then just kind of knowing the overall condition of the engine, how many hours are on it, if it's ever been rebuilt and whatnot.
Battery condition.
Batteries,
and we probably go back to the whole fact of how long has that boat been sitting in one place and when was it actively used. We find that if a boat is being used as it should be, sailed, all those sorts of things, it's probably going to be in much better shape than a boat that's been sitting at a dock tied up for 4 years and hasn't been touched, or sitting in a dry yard for the same amount of time.
Yeah. So where are we looking? That's a big thing because there's boats all over the world, right?
There is. And we think we had a pretty broad search, which is why we've been driving all over the place.
Our search mostly was focused in Mexico. We thought there was the potential to get a pretty good deal for a setup type cruising boat there, and also in California. So on the West Coast. We hadn't looked in the Pacific Northwest at all because traditionally that's kind of a higher priced market. Boats really tend to hold their value up there. So we hadn't looked too much into that. We'd played with the idea of looking in Florida. Thought about that.
Have a lot of boats on our list for the Florida area. The main things with the Florida area is we're worried about the amount of storm damage from the storms that come through there. And we didn't really want to be in the Caribbean and have to deal with the extra cost of, say, going through the canal or shipping it across the state on top of a lot of other things. But we hadn't ruled it out. So for the right boat, we probably would go almost anywhere.
Our main thing was we were trying to group a bunch of boats together that we could look at. Because even if we had really narrowed down the search and thought we had found 5 really good ones, it turned out only one of them usually ended up being any good. So we didn't want to go somewhere for one boat and then spend all that time and money and have it not turn out the way we wanted.
And this is good for us, right? When we say not good for us, because there's a lot of the boats that we do have on the list would be really great project boats. But that's not what we wanted. We didn't want a project boat. We wanted a boat that was in almost ready to go shape with very minor things that would need to be done. So that's what we're basing it on. And that example, we had a boat or 2 maybe in Guatemala and Rio Dulce area that we were really excited about, but not excited enough to make the trip there for one boat that may or may not have been any good. It was too unsure about the condition of it. So we stuck to the areas where there was more 8 to 10 boats that we could look at. Well, let's talk about the boat buying process. How do you buy a boat anyway? So you find a boat you really like. We've done a lot of searching. This will be our second boat. We've had a lot of inspections done. We've had a lot of opinions from people. We've also done our own inspections.
So we thought we'd go into a little bit more detail on how the actual buying process
Especially
works.
for you guys out there that might be new to this. We'll just give you a few little bits from what we've learned along the way, basically, and take it for what it's worth. It's not gospel, but it might be helpful.
So step 1, you find a boat that you like and meets what you think will meet all of your needs and what you want in a boat.
So the hardest part is going to be the pre-work before that, probably, right? Is you need to really be going into the stuff we discussed earlier, and that is type of boat, where you're going to be cruising it, just what are the top list items that you want in a boat.
So
Then you find it.
Yeah, once you have found one that you like, you make an offer on it. And that, depending on the condition, price, location, generally, a lot of times it's less than the asking price, but it doesn't have to be.
There's a lot of different theories out there on what you would offer. I mean, for us, we're offering based on our budget range and on what we think the boat's worth to us.
And what we need to do to it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that's the same for everyone, and that's why a seller shouldn't be offended by an offer price. But if we're going offshore and we know we need to spend $5,000 to $10,000 to redo the standing rigging, then we're going to factor that into our offer price. Just because you're selling it as a boat that's ready to go, and just because a seller tells you they had the rigging inspected 5 years ago and they were told it's in great condition, doesn't mean anything when it's 15 to 20-year-old rigging. Not if you're going offshore.
So you figure out what you want to offer for the boat. You may go back and forth a few times with counter offers and whatnot, but hopefully eventually you settle on an agreed upon price.
After that, you're going to go and get a survey and a sea trial, either order on those. The sea trial, you're generally going to take the boat out under motor and under sail. Definitely make sure you get it under sail if you've got a sailboat. You want to check out the condition of the sails, how the boat handles under power and under sail. Every boat's going to handle a little bit differently, and they're going to have different characteristics.
Yeah. And then the survey, generally the buyer will pay for the survey if you're hiring someone to do it. And this can or cannot include a haul out depending on what you want to do. Basically the survey, you're just going through the entire boat, checking the integrity of the hull, the rigging, all of the systems on board, just seeing the general condition of everything and seeing if it's as it was presented, what's in working order, if there's any things that need to be addressed.
A surveyor is going to be checking, once you're on a haul out, they're going to be checking the moisture in the hulls. They're going to be testing moisture on the decks. They're more than likely not going to be checking your rigging for you, other than what they can see at eye level. That's usually an extra expense. You're going to have to hire a rigging inspector, whether or not they do that or not, to climb the mast. That's not generally covered.
Another thing, you can also get a detailed engine mechanical survey if that's something that you want looked at. The general surveyor is going to look at the boat, give you an idea of all the systems on board the boat and their condition.
So write up any of this you want in your original offer and tell them what it is you specifically want to get looked at. Or you can add these on later on, because you do come back after your survey and sea trial, and you may then present and say, look, I didn't like the way that engine sounded. I would like to request that we have an engine surveyor come out and do an engine look, an engine survey on that. As well as other things, like we had mentioned, we had autopilot issues on the steel boat. You can request anything you want, and you can request either a reduction in the price that you originally had agreed upon, or a fix on those before you go ahead with the purchase.
And usually after the survey and sea trial, you have a certain amount of time that you have to sit down and think about these things, decide whether you want to just reject the boat altogether, accept it, or have things addressed.
Yeah, I would like to say don't get pressured into finalizing on a sale until you're extremely happy with everything. I don't think this happens that often, I'd like to say, but I know when we were doing the sea trial for Sahaya, the steel boat, we were constantly being asked, I was constantly being asked during the sea trial by the broker to sign the paperwork and finalize the deal while we were out on the sea trial. And to me, that was just, I had too many other things that we were thinking of at the time that wasn't in our mind. We were there to see if we wanted to continue with the purchase, not to discuss signing off on it. We were trying to pay attention to what was going on the boat.
Basically, once all that has been finalized, if you come to a common ground and agreement, then it's just signing paperwork and you've bought a boat.
There's a lot of different ways to sign off the paperwork too. We're talking about going through, you can do for sale by owners, you can do brokerages, and it doesn't have to be that expensive. You can get all your documentation done yourself. If you're documenting it through the US Coast Guard or through whatever your documentation services may be in your particular country, or a lot of times you can do a state-by-state documentation as well. We like to do US Coast Guard documentation, which doesn't allow me to be on the title because I'm not an American citizen. So Hillary is the title, the owner and operator of the vehicle for the Coast Guard anyway.
Yeah, and of course there's lots more specifics. All of this is very situation dependent. You can do things like offshore deliveries if you're going to be taking it out of the country, and all sorts of different things that just depend on your particular situation.
You go into insurance, whether you want insurance, whether you need insurance to be in a marina. Pretty much always need insurance in the US for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects of it. Feel free to leave your comments down below and all help each other out and answer some questions. It's a good discussion point. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do things. It's just about being really thorough as you can be when you're making these decisions.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you have any feedback, questions, be sure and leave them down below.
Want to give a huge thanks to all our patrons out there. Thanks for staying with us and supporting us along the way. It's been a crazy couple of months now, and we're going to be going back to Varuna at some point here shortly because we're going to have to sell her, and hopefully to a good home and for a good price.
Yeah.
Also, we hope you didn't find this episode too annoying and boring.
I think it's some good info. I know you guys have been really excited about this boat search and in on all these boats, so we thought we'd go into a bit more detail about what we're looking at. We get these questions
a lot, so we do hope this went out and helped a few people out there, or at least ignited a discussion. And until next time, guys, adios.
Cheers, adios.